So I want to tell you the story of two friends. So there was Jack, and Jack was 10 years old, and he was a Boy Scout. Actually, he was a Boy Scout because he was 10 years old and all of his friends were Boy Scouts. He wasn't much for the outdoors. He liked reading, and he liked cooking, and he liked wood carving, and luckily there were merit badges for that. So, one spring, his Boy Scout troop went out on a jamboree and set up their tents and everything. And they all went off on a hike, and he decided to stay back and help cook. So one of the things he had to do was he had to go and go to the stream and get some water to boil up for the meal. And he took the bucket and he went up the trail, and the bank was steep, so he slipped down the bank and almost knocked himself out, which was very embarrassing. Everyone thought that was so typical for Jack. But another scout came by, helped him up and brought him back into camp, which was very embarrassing. Actually, it was worse than that. The other scout was a Girl Scout. It was worse than that. Her name was Jill. It was worse than that. They went to the same school together. It was worse. They were in the same classroom. So for the rest of their lives, until they reached junior high, they had to endure every day with people saying, "And Jack and Jill went up the hill," you know the rest. So in self-defense, they became friends. They started meeting on the way to work, on the way to school. He lived on one side of the city, and she lived on the other side, but the two streets. It wasn't like on the other side of the tracks, but they were just different neighborhoods, different cultures, different foods, different music. She was athletic, he wasn't. They had almost nothing in common. She would go off to with her family to go hunting and camping and hiking, and he wouldn't do anything like that. Well, actually they did have something. She liked to hunt, and he liked to cook what she hunted. And they also shared an interest in reading. Well, she almost killed him 1 year. See, they had a custom of when she would go off camping, he would give her a book all wrapped up in a bow. And the first night she would set up the tent and turn on her Coleman and start reading the book. She killed him 1 year. They were going out to the Midwest with all of the coyotes going, "Oh!" When she opened the book, it was Hound of the Baskervilles. Anyway, they continued to meet and walk to school and talk. And 1 year on her birthday, he gave her a gift. He had been, as a Boy Scout, he had learned to carve, and he had carved her a duck. A decoy, it's, for her when she went, and she loved it. And for the next several years, every few years, they continued to do that. Now they went on their first date together. He went out with Mary Beth McCoy, Irish, and she went out with Tom McAllister, Irish, and didn't work. And so they did what they always did. They talked about it as they walked to school and walked back. They went to different colleges together, actually. They were on the phone constantly, you know, talking to each other about everything. When they got married, it was a fantastic thing. He married Mary Beth McCoy, and she married Tom McAllister. Would you go figure, you know? And every year, he would go up to her hunting lodge, her family's hunting lodge, and eventually it became her hunting lodge. Her parents gave it to her. And they would go hunt. He had at least 3 restaurants. She had become a forester, written a couple of books. He wrote a book about cooking, hunting food, and she wrote the other half of the book of how to hunt the food. They had a wonderful time together. One year during duck season, she was sitting at the table with her husband and their kids and his wife and their kids, and she says, Jack, why don't you go duck hunting with me tomorrow? And he said, what? It's crazy. She said, that would be wonderful. And his wife started red hair, the kids. She says, look, it'll be tremendous. We'll get up early. The sun won't be up. The only thing will be out there will be the sounds of the insects. Well, the only thing that will keep us warm will be a blanket and a cup of coffee. And we'll sit out and we'll watch the fog over the river, over the lake, and watch the ducks. He agreed. It was terrible. They got up before dawn. All they had was the sound of insects. They sat out in this boat on the lake, cold. They had to wrap blankets around themselves and drink coffee. Worse than that, it was her coffee. And he looked down and he saw all of his decoy ducks that he had carved over all those years. He says, you know, those are pretty good. Now that I see them in action, I really didn't know what you did with them. How? And he looked at, and there was one of them that looked very strange. Didn't look like any of the others, and suddenly it got up and flew away. He was so surprised, he forgot to hold his ears to protect himself from the sound of the gun, which didn't happen. She didn't shoot. And he turned around, and she looked at him, sitting in the transom of the boat, smiling. And she put her hands on his shoulders and said, Jack, I didn't bring you here to bring you duck hunting. I brought you here to show you how good your ducks are. Come, let's pack up and get breakfast. Which they did. They packed up, they got the ducks, they got the boat, they put the boat on the Jeep, and they drove down to this greasy spoon that actually had good coffee. And they had a huge breakfast, and then they did the rest of the day what they had been doing all these years. They walked and they talked. They walked and they talked. They walked and they talked.